The following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
It's been one of the most confusing seasons in Canucks history, but thankfully, we have the man who has each and every answer to the Canucks issues, and that man is Patrick Johnston.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks and also a Canucks writer currently with Daily Hive Vancouver. Before we hop into the show, we got to thank you for tuning in to Locked On Canucks because it is your Canucks every damn day. And we're not here without you tuning in. And we're also not here without those sponsors, baby. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. It looks like it was going to be so much better for the Vancouver Canucks heading into 2024-25. But in typical Canucks fashion, everything fell off the bandwagon. Now, we're all looking for answers for what happened to this season. But I'm telling you, this guy here, Patrick Johnston, has every single answer to what's going on with the Vancouver Canucks. Patrick Johnston, one of the best in the game, one of the best dads out there as well, giving me parenting advice. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm well. I mean, I don't think we've seen you since you adopted the nickname Moral Victories, right? I mean, you've been on the rink since you got to talk about moral victories. Am I right?
Yeah, it's I've been in the ring once since then at a practice, but yeah, for those who don't know that, I think I asked talking after that Nashville game about, it was the first time the team got over 30 shots in a game. You know, what can you say about the performance? And he just shrugged and said moral victory.
He was, moral victory.
Moral victory. So this is my moral victory here, Patrick, getting you on the show. And I'm glad you're laughing. It looks like Canucks losing doesn't have you down too much. But let's get into it. What the hell happened this season?
Oh, man. What happened this season? I mean, listen, first out of the bag, we knew they were going to regress, right? Like, this was not a team that was set up to repeat the successes of last year. That was clear. We knew that the whole time. But I don't think anyone, I don't think there's anyone. I'm careful to speak too much generally, but I don't think there was anyone who thought that this would be a collapse season. And, there was enough talent on this roster. They showed enough in how they played last year. Like, this is the thing. People scream about Rick Tocchet's system. I'm like, well, Rick Tocchet's system scored a lot of goals last year. And it wasn't just about luck. Like, the Canucks were an elite finishing team last year. And that has not been the case this year. Their shots are way down. They aren't getting to the slot as much. Now, did they get outcoached? Did their system, as much as it is? I mean, no system is that complicated. But did their system get tweaked a little bit? Maybe. But fundamentally, I think we've seen in the last couple of weeks that, no, the way that they are getting to the slot, it was, in the end, as much as anything, was it a mentality thing? I mean, this was a team that was dragged down by a massive internal conflict that we are only still getting our heads around. But it was a team that struggled with injury. I mean, some of those injuries I think you can attribute to the fact they were trying to chase the game all the time. That when you're running at that sort of full capacity trying to catch up, that's the other part of the story, right? Like, remember how they kept not scoring first? Like, they kept falling behind right off the bat. There's a bit of a negative feedback loop in all this, and obviously, the mood in the room was poor. They came into the games feeling poor. They played poorly, reinforced that they had to go to the max, which resulted in poor physical results. And now lately, I mean, the irony of all this is that in many ways they fixed the systemic stuff. They're obviously dealing with injuries to their two top centers, but their goaltending's. Am I allowed to swear? By the way, their goaltending's gone to shit, right? Yeah. Like across the board. Like someone mentioned this to me that if you go, I've got to find this. Hold on. If you look back, that like basically, what is it? Yeah, it was J-Pat pointed this out to me. Since the NHL's come back for Four Nations break, do you know which Canucks goalie has the best save percentage?
Don't tell me it's Artur Shilov's.
It is Artur Shilov's. It's nuts, right? Lankinen fell off. Demko's been not great. He's had his moments, but not great. Yeah, Artur. I mean, it's still terrible. 893 for Artur Shilovs. Like, just what?
Yeah.
So that's your season. Like, you want to talk about consistency. They haven't had a consistent stretch where everything's been working, where they've been fully healthy. I mean, they've had fully healthy rosters, but they haven't played like a fully healthy team, even when they've been healthy. And it all comes. I think more than anything, you want to point to one root cause. It's that Miller and Pettersson were having an issue, and it affected both of their games, and the rest is just flows from that.
Yeah, and that is certainly the biggest story of the season there. And Patrick, I know you've been working on the scoop. I don't know if you have it yet. I don't know if anyone really has the full story behind what happened with JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. But we all know JT Miller is now long gone.
Yeah.
He has outscored every single Canuck since the trade. Might I point that out? But Elias Pettersson is still a member of the Vancouver Canucks now. With Elias Pettersson, and they tell you in journalism school, don't ask the double-ended question, but I'm going to do it anyways. Do you think Elias Pettersson can bounce back? And do you think he bounces back with the Vancouver Canucks?
Yes, I think he bounces back. I don't know if it's with the Vancouver Canucks. Listen, we know that they were talking about trading him up until the trade deadline, right? Like that is a thing that I'm not the only person that's reported that. I think in the long run, their preference is to make it work with him. And obviously we've seen flashes before he got hurt. He was playing pretty well. He wasn't the super dominant player they needed him to be, but he was playing a lot better and he was getting points. And, if you want to talk about why did the playoff chase die, well, you could say that some of it's because Elias Pettersson got hurt in a game that they were dominating and shouldn't have lost, but they lost because, they lost two key players and the rest is kind of history. So yeah, like I just think that there's enough there that it's still tough to take, and he hasn't wanted to talk about it. I talked to him briefly before that road trip. He doesn't want to get into it, but he has acknowledged it was affecting his play. And whether that extends back to last year, I don't know, because of course he wasn't playing very well last year either. And there was this discussion, maybe he had some tendonitis or whatever, which, I think slowed him. But obviously the bigger picture was the confidence in a mental game, a mental aspect, because, in the fall, he wasn't playing very well. He wasn't skating very hard, and he insisted he was healthy. And I think it was all in his head. And that was certainly, I think, more than, and he didn't want to talk about it. He was really grumpy about to everyone. I mean, the way he spoke to us, you can only imagine what he was like in person. Everyone says, listen, he's a nice guy. He's a good guy. Like, he means well. But clearly things were not working for him. And it's all about the internal culture of that team. And so can he recover? Can he bounce back here? I mean, the pressure is going to be on if he is here, not just internally, but like fan-wise. Like the way the fans, I mean, people are like, you're the highest paid player. And that comes with pressure. And he certainly is a guy who says, I welcome pressure. And he has been in general a fan of Vancouver. I think he likes living here. But you do find yourself wondering, would he be better off playing in a place where he is a little more anonymous? Or would that be worse? There's less pressure. I don't know. But I think the player, I will continue to say this. I think the player will come back to who he's mostly been, which has been a very good two-way player. The 100-point season wasn't an accident. There are still obviously question marks about, there's going to be question marks given how this season went, about how he's able to sort of make things going, and how much is he, able to dial in on what's being said to him. If he does stick around, I think Quinn Hughes is going to have a huge role in that, because Hughes obviously got the message from management about how he still could do more. And that's consistently a challenge for young players as they come in on talent. They have a work ethic, but they also need to learn that what got them this far is never enough. And to get themselves, not just sustain themselves in the NHL, but to get themselves to the next level, you need more. And so that's where he's at.
Yeah, and I think you alluded to that as well. And everyone's seen the skating stats, and we know, he hasn't been the same player, especially with his speed. Yeah. But it comes back to decision making as well. I mean, throughout the season, just making those uncharacteristic plays where he coughs up the puck in the offensive zone and just not finding the right guy. I mean, defensively, he's fine. I think it's ironic with the Vegas Golden Knights in town on Sunday. isn't Jack Eichel exactly what we thought Elias Pettersson would be? Just an absolute two-way force, hitting 100 points. I still think that is the ceiling for Elias Pettersson. But like you, Patrick, I'm not convinced if that's going to be in Vancouver. Now, earlier this week,
can I just like a point about Eichel? Like Eichel actually wasn't that great on Sunday, but even then he was effective.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not something we've seen. That is, I think, where Pettersson needs to get back to, because certainly he was that guy. You know, even on an off night, he still was around enough. And we just haven't seen that. When Pettersson's been off this year, he's been invisible and terrible, and that's not what the Canucks need. The Canucks need him to be exactly. I think Eichel's a great comparison.
Yeah, 100%. With Elias Pettersson, again, I think there's a decent chance he does get traded this offseason. You know, I've said it before. I think what's best for the team is that you make it work, because you are selling Pettersson for pennies on the dollar if you do move him this offseason. That being said, there's an argument that a fresh start might be what's best for Elias Pettersson. And, you know, earlier this week, I did look at a couple trade scenarios for Elias Pettersson, and I was looking at the other big deals in the cap era. So, you know, I used the Joe Thornton framework, the Jack Eichel framework, and the Ryan O'Reilly framework. So, you know, with Joe Thornton, I used, you know, a top 6 winger, top 4 defenseman, and a 4th liner. I used Carolina, so a return of Seth Jarvis, Jalen Chatfield, Mark Jankowski. With the Jack Eichel framework, it was a package of Benson, Yuri Kulich, a 1st and a 2nd. Yeah. You know, Buffalo got a 1st, 2nd, a top 6 winger, and a top prospect. And Ryan O'Reilly, you got a big young prospect center, a couple 3rd liners and a 2nd round pick. I used Columbus in that example. So Caden Lindstrom as the big young prospect center, Sean Corrali, Matthew Olivier, and a 2nd round pick. Yeah. Are any of those deals realistic for Pettersson? And my take at the time, Patrick, was based on the player he is now, you kind of like all those deals. But if he does bounce back to the player that, you know, he used to be, none of those deals look all that attractive. But in your eyes, what is a realistic return for Elias Pettersson if he does get moved this offseason?
It's so interesting thinking back to that Eichel package, right? Like the idea of basically top prospect and a 1st more than anything. And certainly we know, like, they were close to a deal. It's very clear when Carolina traded for Rantanen, they had been discussing Pettersson as well. And the best we can sort of figure was that it would have been a similar kind of package. It would have been like a 1st and Niches coming back. But in the end, they went with a different player. And like, look where Carolina ended up. Like, they ended up with a young center. And they ended up with a 1st round draft pick. You know, they ended with a couple extra picks that I think they were looking to get rid of, at least one of them. Yeah, I mean, if you're the Canucks, even if he's coming off a bad season, a bad year and a half, you're looking at what the overall pedigree has been. And you're asking teams to take a bet, so you're probably having to retain. But in terms of what's coming back, yeah, you're getting a center, you're getting a forward. I mean, the Canucks need a center. Like, that's the thing at this point. Like, they do need to find a new center beyond Pettersson anyway. But you're looking for finding a center, and you're looking to find a draft pick, because they need like that's the other thing is if you move Pettersson, you are resetting the frame of this team. You are almost certainly not going to kind of take where you're at and sort of plot a slightly different course. Moving Pettersson means that you are basically starting fresh, and that you need to find some new, because it's a young team. Like, they've already made that acknowledgement, right? How they move forward is the real question, and how they what this team is going to look like is where they're at, and the Pettersson question is at the top of all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very curious about the idea of a trade like the Ryan O'Reilly for Tage Thompson deal. And you look at a guy like Caden Lindstrom. I mean, a 4th overall pick, a big body, lots of potential, but he hasn't even played this season. I don't see the Canucks making a deal like that, but I do think that if you're going to trade a guy like Pettersson, that might be the kind of swing you have to take. Maybe not Caden Lindstrom, but a swing like that to try to get a potential 1st-line center who is a pretty young player at this stage of his career.
Yeah, and that's been an interest that this management team has had in the past. Like, they have been very clear. Like, they are willing to look at players who've maybe struggled a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Caden Lindstrom is an interesting kind of option here, right? Because it's a bit of a bet, right? Like, you lose a guy for an entire season at the age of 19 or 18. Like, that's not good. But he's also a guy that is a blank slate, and one of the things that become very clear, and I'm writing about this today, is the sort of the approach that this management team really is taking with their young guys. Like Jonathan Lekarmaki getting sent down, right? Like, it's not just that he hasn't played well, but it's there like, we don't want to, like, you don't want to hand the keys and just give the kid the car.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing everyone kind of caught out this notion that Rick Tocchet talked about, you guys didn't want young guys and blah blah blah. Like, Rick Tocchet, people thought maybe he was referencing McCann and Virtanen, and to a degree he might have been. He didn't know. I don't think he knows that part of the story though. What he knows is what he saw with the young guys that are, or the young, at least the young when he showed up. Pettersson and Hughes and Boeser and Dem, like the core here. I don't know if they were pushed enough. I think the premise is that they weren't pushed enough, and that I know. Listen, and I'm not really knocking Travis Green here. I think he did his best with what he was given, but organizationally, there was not a very good understanding. Jim Benning didn't understand. He talked about it, but I don't think he understood what it means for sort of set the tone as an organization in terms of expectation, what you're able to deliver, and what are the details that matter. And certainly the mentality that we've seen from these young guys, they get on the first bus. People don't know this on the road, but like as an example, there's two. You basically, if you're gonna go on the team bus to the rink from the hotel, there's two buses. There's an early departure and a sort of a later departure. And I've been told that all the young guys take the first bus. And like that stands out, and that's a preparation thing. And someone got and said, you guys really need to get there and be ready to go. Right? No loafing around at the hotel. And that's made it. I mean, whether that makes a difference in the long run, we'll see. But I think instinctually we know that that's a thing that young players need to learn is that they need to be shown the kind of parameters of the job. And certainly that's a difference in what we're seeing here. At least the premise is different. The execution, the results, we'll see. But certainly the theory has been partly that things were just a little too loose. They love talking about Sidney Crosby, but it's stuff like this is why they talk about Sidney Crosby, and so that comes back to what this team needs to be and where it needs to go. And I mean, I have no idea which bus Elias Pettersson takes, for the record. This is not necessarily a shot at him, but it's just a bit of a statement about where things are and what we talk about resets, what really needs to be reset. And it's very clear that like a lot of it is also just how you prepare yourself, how you get ready, how you get going, how your day runs, how you're dealing with yourself mentally. And obviously as you develop as an NHL player, as an athlete, like you start figuring out, okay, I don't need this as much. But the baseline needs to be there. And that's certainly something what we're seeing going forward from this management team.
There you go. You're here to hear from Patrick Johnston first. The Vancouver Canucks have convinced the young players to put the fortnight away and hop on the first bus when they're on the road. Good work there, Patrick.
It's a parenting thing, right? You're just no, that's enough. We're turning it off. We're gonna do it's time for dinner. All the stuff. All right, we got to be at the door at 8:30. What does that mean? That means we start talking about getting out the door at 8:10 or whatever, right? It's silly, but in many ways it is. I mean, it's the basics, the standards that we sort of, I think we understand. I mean, we all learn them from one way or another. And it's the same thing for coaches and the same thing for organizations and the same thing for all that kind of stuff. Culture comes from having the right people, but it also comes from sort of setting the right standards and delivering on those. And certainly we're seeing a live action recreation of the idea of setting up standards. Not that the past standards didn't work for that group, but that this group thinks that the standards need to be like so, and now they have to deliver.
There we go. And Patrick, you've been delivering so far. And if you got some time, we'll try to pick your brain for a few more minutes on the other side. Yeah. If you got to go, it's all good. But find out if Patrick Johnston returns on the other side as we cut to a break here on Locked On Canucks. We'll be back after shouting at our friends over at Monarch Money. Do you ever look at your bank account and wonder, where the F did all my money go? And the only thing you should be spending your money on are subscriptions to the province. But aside from that, if you're blowing too much money on dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, baby, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. And Monarch Money, they help you improve your relationship with your partner. What? Because managing money with your partner is now smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Monarch Money, helping you keep the love alive. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off of your first year, baby. All right, we're back here on Locked On Canucks. Your Canucks every damn day. And Patrick Johnston, a hard-working man out there taking calls right now. So we'll see if he returns to the show. But for now, again, some good insights on what might happen with Elias Pettersson heading into the offseason. And more importantly, we talk about the standards set by the Vancouver Canucks and this organization. And Patrick Johnston alluded to it. The young guys are now working hard down there. But we do know that, as much as the culture has been instilled, there's a high floor with this team based on the young guys in the organization right now. The Canucks do need that star power moving forward. And again, we do wonder, where is that star power going to come from? And I'm curious, for you listening out there, do you think that there's a trade for Elias Pettersson to be made this offseason for a guy like Caden Lindstrom, who again is a 19-year-old center who has missed all of this season, but he does have that Adam Fantilli first-line center potential, a big body who can hit, who can score. And again, I'm not sure if the Canucks would be willing to take that risk. But that being said, if you trade a guy like Elias Pettersson, you got to shoot high, because I look at a return for, look at the package that was Seth Jarvis, Jalen Chatfield, Mark Jankowski for using the Joe Thornton framework. That's a trade that could set your team back for a long time to come, especially with a guy like Seth Jarvis potentially being just a 70-point player overall. Again, the Canucks have a guy in Elias Pettersson who should have 100-point potential, and unfortunately, this guy turned into Philip frickin' Deneau. Unbelievable for your Vancouver Canucks. But this has been, in my mind, one of the wackiest seasons in Canucks history, in a history for the Vancouver Canucks that is littered with bizarre seasons. And again, when we look back at, the past handful of years for the Vancouver Canucks, there's some competition for seasons where the Canucks have been incredibly disappointing. And again, I think with the Canucks right now, it's crazy to think that this team has not made the playoffs in consecutive seasons since the 2011-2012 and the 2012-2013 campaign. It has been 12 years since the Canucks have made the playoffs in consecutive seasons. And I think when you look at the season after they missed the playoffs over the past 12 years, of course, you have the Torts year. You have Willie Desjardins' second year, where 2014-15 was a bit of a mirage. And then you have the North Division season, and you have this season. If we're ranking disappointment between the four seasons, I got to think that this one, of those four, is the most disappointing season in the past dozen years. For a team that, again, had Stanley Cup aspirations. And maybe that's just me being jaded and being drunk off the blue and green. But again, when you look at those other seasons I mentioned, the Tortorella season, I don't think we thought the Canucks were a Stanley Cup contender. The 2014-15 season, almost a dumbed down version of 2012-13 as well. And then the North Division season, there was certainly potential that they could be the best team in Canada and that they were going to build off of what was a pretty dramatic and good season for the Vancouver Canucks in 2019-20. But again, I look at this season and it just has been so incredibly disappointing because they had the pieces in place to be a Stanley Cup contender, and it completely fell off the rails. So if I'm doing a power rankings of disappointing season where the Canucks have missed the playoffs, I would have this season first. I would have the Tortorella season second, because you still had a lot of core guys here from the 2011 team. I would probably have the North Division season third, and then the 2015-16 season in fourth place. But again, you do wonder now, where do the Canucks go from here? because they do have the best defenseman in the world on this team right now. And a guy who is clearly playing hurt right now. And you do wonder if he, shuts it down for the season at some point. But you do wonder where the Canucks go from here because, the big domino, of course, is Elias Pettersson. Do they move him this offseason or not? And then from there, how do you use your cap money this offseason to get another centerman? And it's likely going to come via trade. And as a Canucks fan, again, sometimes we get overly attached to prospects, but I'm curious among Canucks fans, what is your comfort level in trading a first-round pick and one of Tom Willander or Jonathan Lekkerimäki to get a bona fide second-line center? Because that is a steep price to pay for the Vancouver Canucks. And again, especially when you only have two blue-chip prospects in your organization, and you could see why the Canucks would be hesitant to trade either guy. I would say right now, Willander probably is more valuable, but the defense is the position of strength here on the Vancouver Canucks. With Jonathan Lekkerimäki, who, again, as Patrick mentioned, just got sent back to the AHL. Patrick Ovechkin said, get away from this mess. Go tear it up for the Abbotsford Canucks, who have won 13 games in a row. The Canucks need his goal scoring. I would almost argue that Jonathan Lekkerimäki is more integral to the success of the Vancouver Canucks over the next couple of seasons than Tom Willander, simply because they are so desperate for wingers who can score. But centers don't grow on trees, and it is easy to forget that because the Canucks have dealt, guys like Bo Horvat, Elias Lindholm, JT Miller. They've been around these deals for top six centermen, but it's not that often that those top six centermen get traded. And if they are going to get traded, I'm telling you right now, the package is going to look something like a first in either one of Tom Willander or Jonathan Lekkerimäki. If you do want to get a young center in his mid-20s who is conceivably going to be with this team for a long time. And for a team like the Vancouver Canucks, who, again, I don't want to call them a rudderless ship, but it's hard to tell what direction they're really going in right now. They got to stay competitive, but they also aren't really in a position to mortgage the future, considering the fact that, they've now missed the playoffs in, 3 of the 4 seasons that Alvin's been in Vancouver. And, of course, one season was taken over Jim Benning. But still, you're talking about this management regime overseeing a team that has missed the playoffs in 3 of the last 4 seasons. So let me know in the comments here on YouTube or wherever you interact with us on podcasts. Are you comfortable with the Canucks trading a first and one of Jonathan Lekkerimäki or Tom Willander for a young top 6 centerman? Because man, oh man, if you're trading Elias Pettersson, you better get a center. But even then, that's not quite good enough, right? Because I don't think this team is comfortable with Filip Chytil and Elias Pettersson being their top 2 centers. I think ideally, as much as I've been bullish on Filip Chytil's potential, the fact that he has been unavailable for such a large chunk of time, and you wonder if he's even going to come back, you can't have him penciled into the top 6. There's just too much risk there. So the Vancouver Canucks are in a very interesting spot in terms of how they figure out how to fix the center ice position and make this team competitive. And look, I'll say this before we cut to break, but with the structure that Rick Tocchet and Adam Foote have implemented, you don't necessarily need to be the highest scoring team in the NHL. I say you just have to be middle of the pack because this team knows how to defend. They've got a great structure in place. They've got a great penalty kill. You don't see that going anywhere. And the goaltending should be much better than it's been over the past 4 months. As Patrick mentioned a couple minutes in there, courtesy of JPAT, Archer Shilovs with the highest save percentage among Canucks goaltenders since the Four Nations break. That is a wild stat. And really since January 1st, the Vancouver Canucks have the 6th worst goaltending in the NHL at 5-on-5. The only teams that are worse are the Predators, the Flyers, the Sharks, the Sabres, and the Oilers being the one playoff team in that mix. So the Vancouver Canucks, again, they don't have to be a juggernaut offensively. The goaltending should bounce back. But they got a hell of a job to figure out what exactly to do at the center ice position heading into this offseason. Let's cut to break here on Locked On Canucks, see if Patrick joins on the other side. And if not, let's talk a bit about let's talk a bit about the free agents for the Vancouver Canucks. And they are playing a game tonight against the Dallas Stars. Maybe we'll talk about that for 30 seconds in terms of some news and notes from that matchup. You're listening to Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every damn day. We'll be back on the other side after showing it our friends over at Indeed. Man, oh man, I think, if you're an everyday or an occasional listener here on Locked On Canucks, that I may be looking for a co-host. And the place that I'm going to be looking for a co-host will be on Indeed. So whether you're looking for a job or need to hire, it's easy nowadays if you use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites, because Indeed's sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. All right. And again, Kyle Bowen, I kicked him off of Locked On Canucks. Will I bring him back, or will I use Indeed? Who knows? But I think Indeed might be the better option here. And especially because of this, now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this very podcast. Locked On Canucks. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need, baby. All right, we're back here on Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every damn day. And yeah, this season hasn't been what many of us thought. It's been a wacky, wild, and confusing season, which started with the Pettersson and Miller feud, and now questions about the future of Elias Pettersson in Vancouver. And again, some decisions to make this offseason, especially on the trade front, but also on the free agent front as well. And of course, Boeser, Suter, and Forbort are the three main free agents for the Vancouver Canucks. And it is hard to see them losing all three of those guys. But of course, if you're looking at who's likely to stay, I would probably rank it in this order. I would go Pius Suter, Derek Forbort, and then finally Brock Boeser. Brock Boeser? Again, I think there's a pretty strong chance that the longest tenured Canuck in Brock Boeser may be going out the door with Elias Pettersson this offseason. And that would be a crazy diversion for the Vancouver Canucks, considering the fact that, Pettersson, Miller, Hughes, Demko, and Boeser were the core of this team just last season. But with Brock Boeser, you've heard it from the management team time and time again this season that they're evaluating the player. They're clearly not in love with his speed out there as well. But you do need scoring in this lineup, and again, in this free agent class, unless you think you can get Nick Ehlers, the Canucks are going to be an even worse team offensively if they do get rid of Brock Boeser. But that being said, maybe there's a priority from this management group to bolster the center ice position and use that money to fix the center ice position rather than pay a guy at Brock Boeser. Because if you do have a center who can drive a line, you can kind of make the wingers around you a bit better too. And that just hasn't happened this season. It's been the wingers like Connor Garland and Kiefer the Reefer Sherwood, carrying the way for your Vancouver Canucks. I do think Pius Suter is the most likely to stay of the Canucks' three free agents, based on the fact that he's incredibly versatile. He's rock solid defensively. He can give you 15 to 20 goals, and he doesn't necessarily have to play at center either. He can be a very good complementary top six or middle six winger. And Derek Forbort, again, if he comes back on a cheap contract like this season, you think that he's probably likely to stay around with the Vancouver Canucks. Now, the one thing that might change it would be a guy like DPD. We talked about on yesterday's show. Go check out that episode if you haven't already. This comment's making me think maybe Derek Forbort comes back, especially if DPD is no longer with the team. KJ in the comments saying it might be DPD a first and Höglander for a proper first or second line center. And that's an interesting comment because we've heard Patrick Allvin say he's been very hesitant to trade away guys like Willander, DPD, Soriaminio, or Kirill Kudryavtsev. The defensive prospects on this team, again, have raised the floor of this team overall. And we talked about on yesterday's episode, Elias Pettersson might just be the fourth defenseman in the past 20 years that the Canucks have actually drafted and developed. Going back to 2004, it's really been Alex Edler, Ben Hutton, Quinn Hughes. and now potentially Elias Pettersson. I think the Canucks are very hesitant to trade a guy like that, but like I said, it's going to cost something like that, whether it's a first and Willander and Lekkerimäki or a first along with DPD and Höglander. It's going to be a package like that if you do want to get a proper first or second line center. The Vancouver Canucks do play the Dallas Stars tonight. It sounds like Thatcher Demko will get the start. Tyler Myers not joining the team on the road trip. They are down to 6 defensemen right now. And again, you do wonder, once the Canucks officially get eliminated, if Quinn Hughes will also be on the shelf for the rest of the season. Elias Pettersson, Filipino, not joining on the road trip either. No huge surprise there. Although we still don't really know what's wrong with Elias Pettersson. But again, the Vancouver Canucks, they're out of the dance, and the games don't matter all that much. We're mainly just watching the young guys at this point. Give me more Atu Ratu. Give me more DPD. Give me a little bit more Valentino Martini. And let's see what these young guys can do over the next 5 games. And let's see what Thatcher Demko can do as well. See if he can have a bounce-back night after what was a tough night against the Seattle Kraken. And he was a little bit better in that game against the Anaheim Ducks. And then the last note here for me would be, you look at the standings, and some people are wondering, how far could the Canucks fall down the standings? What's the highest draft pick they could get? And honestly, there's probably not much more movement for your Vancouver Canucks. Now, the teams behind them right now, Utah has 1 less point than the Canucks. Same amount of games played. Detroit, a game in hand on the Canucks, 3 points back. The Rangers in their free fall, also 3 points back with 77 games played. The likelihood is that the Vancouver Canucks may fall 1 more spot, maybe 2 if you're feeling optimistic about the draft odds. Maybe they fall to 20th overall, and that would give them the 13th overall selection in the draft, barring something crazy with the lottery. So we'll see what the Canucks can do here. Heading into the final 5 games of the season. And man, oh man, Patrick Johnston, maybe let's pick your brain for a couple more minutes. I was going to sign out, but here you're back, buddy.
No, I'm back. Yeah, I had to take a call, but get the scoop. No, there's no scoops. But
oh man, that's too bad, buddy. I was hoping that you're going to break some news here on Locked On Canucks, but I do want to ask you a couple more questions before we get out of here. You know, I was talking about where this season ranks in terms of the most wacky and disappointing seasons in Canucks history. Would you say that this has been the most disappointing seasons in Canucks history? I know there's a lot to choose from there, but where does it rank for you in terms of maybe most disappointing or wackiest seasons in team history?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly in the sort of recent memory. I think disappointing is definitely the way to frame it. In terms of wackiest, I mean, obviously 97, 98 always stands out. I know you're probably not old enough for that, but just the chaos. I mean, I was in high school when that happened, and just the chaos of the man ownership kind of you want to talk about activist owners. That was the 1 year John McCaw's guy, Stanley McCammon, was really active. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like just trading everybody, coaches galore. I mean, I'm trying to think. So was it Boudreau's first season? That was, I mean, to be honest, that was pretty wacky because like that's coming out of the COVID season. You know, another chance for Travis Green. Team can't score. They play too much. They dial too much in on defense. And then firing management, firing coach. Like it's just wild to look back and think about. But I don't think that compares to the disappointment that this year was. The sort of collapse of 2013, 2012, like, no sort of repeat playoffs. Again, those were disappointing, but were they wacky? Like this year, I mean, has this year been wacky? I think so because of the Miller-Pettersson dynamic. And then just sort of the way that the injuries, the bizarre injury to your number 1 goalie, just the kind of lack of ability to make anything happen, the collapse of scoring, on and on and on. Questions about the coach's future. It's definitely up there. I'm trying to think, when was it? No, that was during the lockout that Burke ended up doing his press conference. So that doesn't count. I'm just going back here through the seasons, trying to remember. I wonder if 94, 95, or 90. You talk about one of the seasons around 94. I will go back in the Wayback Machine for everybody here, and like 94. Like the thing to understand about 94 is that team was kind of out of nowhere, but also wasn't. They're the only team in NHL history to have both won and lost 40 games in a season. Like, you want to talk about inconsistency.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
Like that team could play. And like the year before, 93, they went in the playoffs as sort of a maybe Stanley Cup contender, and then they just didn't have it. Like they ran into I think it was Edmonton in the second round, or LA in the second round, and just couldn't really make it work. And they should have, because the Kings were good. Like, that's Gretzky's last kick of the can. The Kings were a good team, but the Canucks, I think on the whole, were seen as kind of the bigger, stronger, more depth, younger team. Maybe that experience was like a necessary thing for 94. So like 94, like 93 should have been better. 94 is what 93 should have been. And then 95, like there's a bit of, they were legitimately a Stanley Cup contender, and then they just flamed out. And there was a lot going on. Obviously, there was a whole amount of chaos around Bure, and Gino Ojic was having a hard time in life. Pat Quinn's trying to reset. Pat Quinn struggled to find defensemen. That was the other story, was that like he threw a lot of darts. He never really, other than maybe 94, never really found a defense core that was good enough or deep enough. And yeah, so you're kind of like, it was a team in transition, but they never really transitioned away from that. So that is 95, I suppose. And then before that, there's nothing, right? Like 82 was a fun team, but they rode a bunch of bounces, and there was nothing around them that suggested they were ever going to have anything, wacky. I mean, I suppose if you want to call the year that they tried to, or that they did hire Pat Quinn, even though he was under contract with LA, like that's a wacky situation. And on the backs of having traded Cam Neely, that's, like giving up Thomas Gradin. I mean, I suppose if you want that maybe counts, but like this season is almost incomparable in terms of, because I don't think, like I said off the top, like the expectations were pretty reasonable. I think most people knew that they were unlikely to repeat as division champions. They still thought that we all thought they were a playoff team, and they're not. And that's the hardest part. Like I talked to Brock Boeser about this on Friday. And it sucks. Like, he's a guy that bleeds blue, and was a playoff performer, and he showed that he can be a guy, like, or sort of not just a guy, but like he can be a dude, and now that he doesn't get to do that, and in certain level he's part of the story. Like he beats himself up about how badly he handled the trade deadline. Because he said it got to me, and I just couldn't figure my way out of it. And in many ways, you can say, well, that happens every year, Brock, and that's that's something he wishes he could overcome, because if he scores a goal here, he scores a goal there, that makes a difference. So yeah, it's as a reporter, this is terrible. Like, it's so hard to find things to write about. Like, it's just another game. Like, the games are meaningless almost, right? Like, it's like, okay, how, if quote unquote they win tonight, they're still not officially eliminated, right? If they lose, they are. But like, there's that. I'm not even talking about it. I mentioned it, but I'm not writing about it because it's over. I've declared the season over after, I think, Columbus. Like, that loss in Winnipeg last week kind of piled on the point that the point they gave up in Columbus was the end. I mean, you could go back a week before that. The Rangers loss was the end. You talk to Farhan, he'll tell you that. Like, and he's probably right. But like, the fact that that's how narrow the margins were, and now there's no margin, and it's just like this. I've seen this dance before, and it sucks. Thankfully, there's only another week left of it.
Yeah, we're almost at the tail end there. And yeah, it's funny you're mentioning about when the Canucks season ended. Kyle and I here on Locked On Canucks, we were calling the Canucks cooked back in January after that loss to the Winnipeg Jets when they lost 6-1. The everydayers and occasional listeners on Locked On Canucks might know, but that game scarred my daughter. She still walks around the house saying Kyle Connor. Patrick, I'll tell you. So we had the highlights on. I knew the Canucks lost, but she's sitting there chanting, saying, "Go Canucks, go!" And then there's Kyle Connor scores. Kyle Connor scores. Kyle Connor scores. And now my daughter, when she thinks about hockey, all she does is walk around the house and talk about Kyle Connor, man.
Well, Winnipeg Jets have himself another fan.
The Canucks have already failed my daughter. You mentioned Brock Boeser quick, and I'll ask maybe one or two questions before we get out of here on Locked On Canucks.
Yeah.
Brock Boeser, Pius Suter, Derek Forbort, the three UFAs on this team. In your prediction, who stays and who goes?
I think there's a good chance Forbort comes back. I think they've been pretty happy with him as like a leader. He's, listen, he plays a really dull game, but the numbers don't lie. It's very effective. The Canucks control play when he's on the ice. So I won't be surprised if he comes back. Boeser, it's tough to say, man. Like he wants to be here. His heart wants to be here, but I think he also knows that financially it would be silly of him not to find out what's out there. He hasn't said that to me, but that's just me trying to read the tea leaves from the conversations I've had with him and with his agent. I will, there's certainly, you never say never, right? But just sort of the position of where this team is at. I mean, it's also a question of what are they going to do this summer? Like, can they actually find all the centers they need? Like, it's not just finding another repeat. It's finding, like, they've got Hedl, but they've got questions about Hedl. Is Pius Suter back? Like, there's a lot of question marks up the middle for this team this summer. Can they afford Brock Boeser because of that? That's part of the reason why I think they've held the line so hard on him is because they recognize the sort of position, the value, trying to value positions and be strong on the valuation of that. And so I don't know. And then, did you ask Pettersson or what did you say? Suter?
No, I said Boeser, Suter, and forward. So
yeah,
you got it, buddy. You got it.
Suter, yeah. So Suter, like, I don't know if like I wrote about this on Sunday. Like, you look at Vegas, right? Like, pull up Vegas's salary cap, and like it's so instructive. I'm just going to bring it up right now so I can remind myself of what it looks like, because it's just an absolute tale of how to like keep the eyes on the prize. I know everyone loves talking about LTIR with them, but like keep the eyes on the prize. They've got two high paid forwards, right? Eichel and Stone. Eichel's 10 million, Stone's 9.5. Then you have this fascinating second tier guys: Hertl, Carlson, Barbashev. Hertl makes 6.75, which was the deal he signed in the Sharks. Carlson's 5.9. Now he's getting old. Both all these Carlson's 32, Hertl's 31, and Barbashev's on 5 million. He's 29. So those guys are the Hertl especially. He's signed till 2030. So that's the longest one, probably the longest deal. The one you're kind of, but at least the value's there. But like, are those three guys, like, is Pius Suter any of those three guys? And my answer is no. Like, I love the guy. I think he's a great player. He's having a great finish to the season. But realistically, he's a guy that should be on your third line that you can bump up, right? Carlson's become that guy. But what Carlson's being paid still, like, when he got to sign this contract, he was a second line center, right? Are you, like, do you feel comfortable paying Pius Suter, like, $5 million a year? Like, I'm just not sure he's that guy. If he's at 4, I suppose. The rest of the story, by the way, Nico Roy at 3 million, Brett Howden at 1.9, and then here's Pavel Dorofeyev, who's like 1.83, and like a guy that's the player he is. Like, there's few guys that play like him, and like it was astounding watching him play on Sunday. And you're just like, that's value. That's how you get value. And like Jonathan Karamaki is not that guy right now, but like, they need him to be a guy like that very fast, because you just can't find players like that. And there's just not enough in this. They've got a lot of guys kind of swirling around the edge of the roster, right? But there's no center coming up. Like, there's no, there's a couple defensemen that are interesting. They've obviously got the guys that are in the roster right now. They have high hopes for Victor Mancini, but he's a big project, and Elias Pettersson has played well and he's developed. But like, realistically, are any of those guys going to be stars? No. Tom Willander, they think he'll be a top 4 guy, we all think, but I don't think he's going to be a star. This team needs a lot. To go back to Botch's old saying, they need an army of guys, and they don't have that. And that's the thing that's worrying. If you're really looking at where things are at, given where they reset. I mean, you look back, they had Pettersson, Miller, and Horvat. I don't know if you could have really made all three work, but like, they're a long way. They were one of the top teams in terms of center depth just a couple seasons ago. Now they only have one of those guys, and that to me is the biggest challenge facing this team right now. And so I don't know. Is Pius Suter part of that solution? I have no idea, but it's a big challenge going ahead this summer.
Yeah, and it is a big challenge. And I even mentioned on yesterday's show, Patrick, conceivably Aturatu could be that guy that replaces Suter.
Yeah. Well, that's it, right? Is he your Suter? Like, if he needs to pick up his skating. He knows that, right? Like that would be a great story, and yet you still need to find another guy.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
they need a guy that can play top minutes, and I don't know. Like, is that John Tavares? Like, I don't know if John Tavares would come here, right? Like Sam Bennett would be amazing, but why is Sam Bennett leaving Florida? Like,
yeah, exactly. Those are more or less pipe dreams for the Vancouver Canucks, but lots to talk about there as we get into the offseason. Patrick, I got one more question before we get out of here on Locked On Canucks. Obviously, you're one of the best in the biz here in Vancouver. What would you say is your greatest achievement as a reporter, either this season or just all time in your time covering this team? Yeah.
what a great question. That's a really great question. I'm proud. I'm proud of being able to stick to what I do and say what I think is necessary and report what I think is necessary. Yeah. And I think I'm considered. I'm my greatest achievement, I think, is I go into that room, and in general, I think I have good relationships with the players. I'll just tease the story about Dakota Joshua that's coming out soon. Like heartfelt conversation with that guy, and that's I think that's what I'm most proud of, is that I've got myself into a spot where I can have these conversations. You know, you see guys that are. I was walking down the hallway after I was a little bit late coming out of the dressing room post game on Sunday, and you're going down the hallway, and there's Brock Boeser, you know, where the players kind of will talk to each other after the game, and there's Brock Boeser talking to Ben Hutton and Tanner Pearson, and Pearson looked at me, and he's returned something, and he nodded and he smiled, and I was just like, oh, hey, how's it going? And I just kept going because it was, you know, that's their moment, it's not for me, but I was like, okay, you know, there's a guy that left in a tough situation. And, you know, was a media story in a way he definitely didn't want to be. It wasn't his choice. And there's a media person, and he, you know, if I may go and talk to him. You know, I mean, Ben Hutton's my target for when Vegas comes back. 6-game Ben Hutton, because maybe he'll get his 7th game of the year. Like, what a fascinating story, right? And like, whether it comes to be a story or not, I have no idea. But yeah, like, I think if I talk about achievement, it's that I'm able to pull those kinds of things. That I have, you know, reasonable rapport with the players and the coaches, and that I'm able to keep doing this.
Well, Patrick, that's why you're the full-time and I'm the part-timer. I'd say my greatest achievement is getting the scoop that Derek Forbort was drinking Pepto-Bismol out of a Timmy's cup in Game 2 of the season. That is my greatest achievement
fantastic
as a reporter for the Vancouver Canucks.
Hey, it's fun. Those fun little things, man. You need those are the things that keep us alive, right? Were you on the banana case? Was that you too with Kuzmenko?
No, I wasn't on the banana case with Kuzmenko. No, I can't take credit for that one.
No, anyway. All right. Well done.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Patrick, well done to you. Thanks for joining Locked On Canucks. Thanks to all of you for tuning into Locked On Canucks. Whether you're an everydayer, an occasional listener, a first-time listener, a new subscriber, or you joined us on the live show on YouTube, we appreciate the hell out of each and every one of you. If you like what we're doing, go subscribe and like on YouTube. On the podcast side, go follow us and leave a 5-star review. But we got to get out of here. I'm Trevor Beggs. That guy is Patrick Johnston, and you've been listening to Locked On Canucks.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.